Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another episode of Beauty History. I am your host, Allison Chase, but my friends call me Allie. So for today's video, we are talking about the cosmetics industry giant and business tycoon, Estee Lauder. But before we go any further, let's take a second to grab our iced coffee or a hot coffee. Let's take a sip and let's get started. Now, I have to admit that I do not own any Estee Lauder makeup to use in today's video, so I would appreciate if you would leave me a comment down below letting me know which makeup items or skincare items or perfume I should try from this brand. When I think of the aesthetic of Estee Lauder beauty, I think of a more classic or traditional beauty. I'm thinking of a really beautiful, clean slate, a neutral eye, and a really beautiful, bold red lip. So let's go ahead and dive into the story. So Estee Lauder was born Josephine Esther Mentzer on July 1st, 1906. So she was born to two Jewish immigrant parents. Her parents were Hungarian and Czech. They had independently moved or immigrated from Eastern Europe in the 1890s to New York. And then once they arrived here, that's how they met each other. And she was also one of 8 children. I'm going into this Charlotte Tilbury Sophisticate palette because I think it's going to be very neutral and beautiful. And I'm going to go into this light color here. And being one of 8 children of 2 immigrant parents, she grew up quite poor. Her father had been a tailor in the old country, but he actually found it to be more profitable in New York to own a hardware store. And the family actually lived above the hardware store. So her parents gave her the name Josephine to sound more Anglo and more American, but she actually went by her middle name Esther, and her nickname was Estee, and so that's what people called her when she was younger. So at a young age, Estee would accompany her father while he worked. She would watch him as he ran his hardware store. He was a bit of a one-man show. You know, he owned the hardware store. He made the sales. He refilled the stocks. He did a bit of everything. And from a young age, she watched and absorbed all of his marketing and sales tactics. I can just imagine a young Estee sitting behind the counter on like a little stool and just observing her father as he's doing the hustle and bustle and selling to clients. And, you know, because that hardware store was what put food on the table, so it was very important for him and his clients to be happy and to make sales. So from a young age, she learned all of these sales tactics and this marketing, and also how to run a business because she saw her father juggling all of these things at once. I'm just going into this shade right here. So when she became a teenager, the outbreak of the First World War happened, and when this happened, one of her uncles, John Schultz, came to live with the family. Now, he was a chemist by trade, but he had started making his own cosmetics, and he would make them in the family kitchen, like on the stovetop, stirring pots, adding ingredients, because he was a chemist, so he understood which ingredients should go in what. And he only made a few products. He made a lotion, a cream, I believe he made a rouge, and maybe a perfume. And he taught young Estee how to take care of her skin because everyone, you know, gets breakouts and whatnot when they're a teenager. And so he taught her how to take care of her skin properly, how to have like a glowing complexion. And she really learned a lot from him. And so I can also imagine her peering over his shoulder as he's stirring pots and adding ingredients and measuring things to create the perfect face creams. And he also showed her different techniques to massage the skin and not only apply moisturizers and lotions, but also the proper massage techniques and all that. That's where she learned those types of tricks. So just by birth, she learned marketing from her father and merchandising from her uncle. So as a teenager, she went into her local salon. I believe it was called House of Ash Blondes or something to that extent. And the owner noted how beautiful her complexion was and how glowing and radiant it was. And so young Estee said, hold on a minute, let me come back. And so the next day she came back with a box full of bottles and creams and lotions that her uncle had made, and she sold them. So she started her own little business in high school where she would go to different salons, and as the women were sitting under, I don't know what they're called, but you know those big apparatuses that dry your hair, or as they were getting their hair dyed, you can't really move. You're kind of stuck there for a few hours. So she would roll in and start showing her creams and her lotions, and she would give a demonstration, and she would also do these little massage techniques to rub the product in to make it more effective, and it started being a lucrative little business for her. Now I'm dipping into this shade here. And so it was at this time that she was going around to local salons and businesses and giving her spiel and selling her products, or her uncle's products, I should say, that she had this particularly scarring experience with a client. So she was at a salon doing her thing, doing her demonstration, and she noted that one of the patrons had a really lovely blouse. And so she asked her, "Oh, where did you buy that?" And the patron looked at her and said, "What does it matter? You can't afford that." This was a really scarring experience, as you can imagine. I mean, can you imagine someone being that cruel and rude to you for no reason? And, you know, at this point, Estee was still a teenager, and she was feeling a lot of the things that teenagers feel: insecure, unsure of their place in the world. And for her, she came from two immigrant parents. Both of her parents spoke with these really thick Eastern European accents. She was Jewish, and she really felt like she did not fit in. She felt like her parents really had still an old school mentality, like their mindset, their mentality was still stuck in the old country, and she wanted to fit in. She wanted to integrate and just be a normal teenager, and she really felt this conflict because I think she really resented the fact that her family was so poor and different, and she wanted to fit in. The clients that she saw at the salons was what she wanted, you know, seeing the wealthy women coming in and getting their hair done all the time. That was the life that she wanted. That's what she was trying to get to. And I think that really mean patron kind of pointed out the obvious, and it made her realize that in order for her to sell to high society, in order for her to sell her brand and her products to wealthy people, she would have to play the part, and she would later reinvent herself. It was around this time that she started using the name Estee instead of Estee, because Estee is just a nickname for Esther. And so I think that she was trying to sound more sophisticated, more European, but not Eastern European. And she was just trying to reinvent herself. And it's noted that throughout her life, she did confabulate a little bit about her upbringing. So as I mentioned, she grew up in Queens, she grew up poor. She actually would lie a little bit and claim that her mother was from Vienna and that her family was part of some long-lost nobility. She claimed that she grew up in Long Island, that she grew up in a big, rich house, and that she had an Italian nanny raising her. She claimed that she had horse stables on the grounds where she grew up. This is a story that she concocted as the years went on. This wasn't just a story she invented right away. It's just like as the years progressed and as she tried to fit into the high society that she was trying to sell to, she reinvented herself and she invented herself and made up this story, which, you know, I really have a hard time judging her for that, because it's really hard when you grow up feeling like the other and feeling like the outsider. And so I think she did what she felt she had to do to survive and to get by. And I don't really think we can judge her on that. And I mean, there are still people to this day that are anti-Semitic. So having a name like Estee Menser from Queens probably was quite indicative of her class and who she was. And so she was just trying to get away from it, I guess. Okay, so once she graduated high school, she continued working for her uncle. He would make the creams, she would go to different salons and do her thing. In the late 1920s, she met a man named Joseph Lauder. And in the 1930s, I believe, 1930 itself, they got married. Now, what's interesting is the name Estee Lauder comes from his family name. And when they got married, he actually changed his name because the spelling was incorrect. So Joseph, his parents were also Eastern European Jewish immigrants. And when his father came to Ellis Island, there was some sort of miscommunication with the immigration officer, and the immigration officer misspelled the last name. So when Joseph and Estee got married, they took this as a chance to change the name. So the name Lauder that we see now spelled with a D is the correct spelling. Somehow they added the letter T instead of D, but it was corrected. And this was also something that happened to a lot of people at the time. There were a lot of people who had names that people just couldn't understand or didn't know how to spell, so they just kind of invented a new spelling. So Estee and Joseph would go on to have their first son in 1933. His name was Leopold. So at this point in time, during the day, Estee would go from salon to salon and show off her cosmetics and the products that her uncle had made, and she would do demonstrations, she would do applications, and she would sell all day. And then at night, she would go back home and help her uncle concoct and mix and make more creams and lotions. So at this point in time, her marriage really started to suffer because, like many women, finding the balance between family life, between being a mother and a wife and having a career is really difficult. This is a tale as old as time. And so unfortunately, her and Joseph did get a divorce in 1939. So at that time, she decided to move down to Florida with her son, and she continued the same thing. She continued her business. She did not stop. And a few years later, her son actually became quite sick. And so Joseph came down to Florida to spend time with them and just like recoup together. And it's at this time that their romance rekindled and they fell back in love, and they actually got remarried in 1942. They had a brief separation, but they came back together. And I think that's just the most beautiful story, especially because they have children together. I think when couples can find a solution to their problems and just make it work, I just think that's so wonderful. And they stayed married until Joseph's death in the 1980s. Once they got remarried, this is really when the Estee Lauder career took off. So he quit his job and started working for her and for the company. So he would run with the production side of things and also some paperwork, and she would continue with marketing and sales because she was the saleswoman. At this point in time, their company was just the two of them, so it was quite an intimate company. I think what helped Estee Lauder the most is she was the brand herself, and she really believed in the one-on-one touch with her clients. So whenever she would go to a salon or an event and she would just sell her products and give the demonstration and show the massage, she had a physical connection with her client, and that made people feel closer to her. And also, companies in general spend a lot of money doing market research and finding out what people want, finding out their clients' needs. She was on the floor, one-on-one, face-to-face, asking people what they needed, what they wanted, and they were giving her all of the information. She skipped all of those extra steps. She would learn every day, every new region she went to, she would learn exactly what she needed to in order to sell better the next day. And she relied heavily on word of mouth because she was the first person to pioneer the gift with purchase. Now I'm going to go into my Chanel Ultra Le Teint foundation. Now we think of a gift with purchase as something quite standard. Not every company does it, but a lot of them do, especially Estee Lauder. I mean, they have these big blowout gift with purchase events all year round. But at the time, no one did that. And she was advised by, I believe, her lawyer or her accountant that she would go bankrupt if she gave a gift with purchase. That person was wrong. And so she relied heavily on word of mouth, because when she would sell a face cream or a lotion or a cold cream or something, she would offer a small lipstick as a gift. And this was brand new. No one had done that. So women would go home from the salon with their hair done, with a brand new lipstick and a moisturizer. People would ask them like, oh, what happened? Where did you go? Who did you see? And so they would tell them about Estee Lauder. And then it was really a word of mouth business that started. And so at this point, Joseph and Estee, I believe they rented a kitchen, or a restaurant, I should say, and they used the kitchen of the restaurant to make the cosmetics because they just needed more space, like more volume to make their products. And in 1944, Estee would take a extremely brief maternity leave to have her second son, Ronald. So at this point in time, the company was rather small and still unstable, not unstable, but still quite shaky, you know? Things were not 100% solid yet, but they got their big break when the retailer Saks Fifth Avenue in New York made a contract to buy $800 worth of products from Estee Lauder. Now, this was in the 1940s, so that's a lot of product. And at this point in time, they still only made like maybe 4 or 5 products, and they were all skincare. I believe there was a moisturizer, a lotion, a cleansing oil, maybe a cold cream, things like that. Anyway, this $800 worth of product sold out in 2 days. So this was a pretty good turning point for Estee Lauder. And in 1946, the Estee Lauder Cosmetics was incorporated. So the name brand, the logo that we think of, was incorporated in 1946. So as you can see, there was a lot of work behind the scenes to get up to that point. We often think of success as something that happens to lucky people, but it's often just a lot of hard work and maybe a few lucky breaks, but a lot of hard work. I'm going into the NARS Creamy Radiant Concealer in medium 1 Custard. And then after that, there was a Neiman Marcus in Dallas, Texas that offered a similar contract. And so she went down to Dallas because every time there was a new salon or business that would sell her products, she would go there herself and she would go on the floor. She would meet with the clients and the customers. She would do her demonstrations. She would offer the massage techniques, and she would also train the staff herself because she wanted the staff to know how to present the products, how to hold the products, how to show the products, how to give the massages. She really had a very meticulous and thought out method to her marketing, and she was very, very hands-on. And she was once quoted as saying, "Never underestimate a woman's desire for beauty," which is so true. The lengths and the money we will spend for beauty is quite extraordinary. So at this point, the company was doing well. But in 1953, Estee Lauder came out with something that really skyrocket or rocket launched the company and cosmetics into a whole new world. So at this time, women, when they wanted to wear perfume itself was something that was gifted to them. It wasn't really an item that a woman would just buy for herself because perfume was very expensive, and it was seen as something you were gifted by your husband or your boyfriend or your lover, and so you would have to wait for a birthday or an anniversary to receive a new perfume. So Estee Lauder decided to create a perfume for women by women. So she invented something called Youth Dew, which was a perfumed bath oil. So every night or every morning as a woman took her bath, she would put a few drops of this perfumed oil. And so throughout the day, she would continue to smell like this perfume. This went wild. People could not get enough of it. In a few years, Youth Dew made up 80% of the sales for Estee Lauder. It really revolutionized perfume. It made it more accessible. It made it less expensive because it was a perfume oil. It was more affordable, so women could go out and buy it for themselves they didn't have to wait around for someone to gift it to them. So Youth Dew was a tremendous success, and there are a lot of people to this day who still use Youth Dew because it's so iconic. And so as the years progressed, she created other perfumes in the same vein, same category. She created White Linen, Cinnabar, and Beautiful, to name a few. There were many more. I'm just going to go into my Chanel cream bronzer now. It's also stated that Estée Lauder was also extremely vigilant about her competitors, and her formulas for her perfumes is something she only trusted with her family. She didn't want her secret recipe to get out there. I'm going to go into my Chanel Rouge Contraste blush. So as the 50s turned into the 60s, Estée continued to add to the company, and she wanted to create the first allergy-tested cosmetics line, and that's when she came out with Clinique. If you didn't know, Clinique is part of Estée Lauder, and to this day, Clinique continues the gift with purchase formula. I'm just going to go into a bit of highlighter. This is the Dior Skin Nude Air Luminizer in 001. And then as the 70s rolled in, she really wanted to break the international market because at this point she was huge in North America, but she hadn't really broken international ground, especially in Europe. So eventually she sold her products in Harrods of London, but the hardest seller was in France in Les Galeries Lafayette. So she had a meeting set up in the Galeries Lafayette, which is a beautiful mall, by the way, and she was there speaking to a buyer. This is the person who decides which products will be sold at the store. They had their meeting on the ground floor at Les Galeries Lafayette, and this man wanted nothing to do with little Estee, okay? He just didn't have time for her. He wasn't interested in her products, and she could tell that this was not going well. So she was trying to show her perfumes and show off her products, and he was not interested. So she accidentally dropped a bottle of her perfume on the floor. And so whenever a woman would walk by, whenever a shopper would walk by, they would say, "Oh my God, that smells amazing. What is that? Where can I buy it?" So the buyer for Les Galeries Lafayette had no option but to start selling Estée Lauder cosmetics. I like this lady. I'm going to go into this Chanel Stylo Yeux number 88. This is a waterproof black liner, and I'm going to finish it off with this Volume mascara. So for the lips, I'm going to go into this Chanel lip liner number 174 Rouge Tendre, and this Gucci lipstick in number 500 Odalie Red. So throughout the 1980s and 90s, Estée Lauder Incorporated continued to prosper, and by 1999, Estée Lauder actually comprised 50% of all cosmetics sold because Estée Lauder not only created new brands like Clinique and also Origins, but they also acquired different companies as well. I'm going to go ahead and list off just a few of the companies that are owned under the umbrella of Estée Lauder. These include Aveda, Bobbi Brown, Clinique, DKNY Perfumes, Donna Karan Perfumes, Jo Malone, By Kilian Perfumes, La Mer, MAC, Michael Kors Perfumes, and Tom Ford Beauty, just to name a few. So in 1973, Estée Lauder decided to step down as president of the company. She still remained an active member of the company. She just decided to step down. And that's when one of her sons actually became chairman of the board. So her son Ronald took over as chairman of Estée Lauder International, and his wife was also part of the business as well. And her other son Leonard also contributed to the company, as well as his wife. So it has really remained a family company, not only with her children, but her daughters-in-laws as well. So Estée Lauder has accumulated a tremendous amount of wealth. At some point in time, she was voted by Forbes magazine as the 4th richest woman in the entire world. She's probably one of the wealthiest self-made women because she grew up in a family of 8, in a family of Jewish immigrants, in a family that was poor. Like, she did not exactly have a lot of helping hands as a kid. She didn't grow up to a super rich family. She didn't grow up famous. You know, she really was self-made. So it's quite astonishing all that she was able to accomplish. Not only was she an incredible business mind, but she was also incredibly wealthy as well. Those two generally go hand in hand. But she was also able to elevate herself to the high society that she had strived for. Remember back that story that I told you about that very mean lady at the salon who told her, "Meh, you can't afford this, you're too poor." You know, I think for a long time, Estee really tried to elevate herself to a level of high society, and she really accomplished that because she was rubbing elbows with Nancy Reagan, Wallace Simpson, Princess Grace Kelly, so she really arrived in every sense of the way. I think in so many ways, Estee Lauder is a perfect example of the American dream. She loved her business, but she also loved her family, and not only did her sons and her daughters-in-law work for her, but also her grandchildren would eventually join the ranks in the business as well to keep everything in the family. I mean, I think if you are born a Lauder, you might not have an option about whether or not you want to work on the business side of cosmetics, but that seems like a pretty sweet deal anyway. So she officially retired in 1995, but through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, she worked a lot on charity work, on philanthropy, whether it was civil projects or art projects. She donated a lot to cancer research. I know that the Estee Lauder company does a lot of research and charity work when it comes to breast cancer awareness, breast cancer screening and research and all that. But she also worked on projects to help restore the Palais de Versailles. She had the money for it. And she also helped build several playgrounds in the Central Park in New York. So she kind of had her hand in different charities and really helped spread a bit of her money around. I feel like a few of our videos here on the beauty history series have been a bit heavy, have been a bit dark, have dealt with some darker subject matter, but this one here makes me feel so optimistic. I don't know if it's Estee's perseverance, her drive, or her success that just make me so happy. Just seeing someone overcome so much and accomplish so much. Estee Lauder passed away in 2004 in her home on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. She passed away at the age of 97. You know, when we think of Estee Lauder now, we think of the makeup company, we think of the brand, we think of this gigantic umbrella company that just owns half of the cosmetics store. But you really think back that this was just one woman. At some point in time, this was just one woman with a dream and ambition. And it's quite remarkable and inspiring what she was able to do. And it's a really nice, like, heartwarming story. I find her story has so much humanity to it. And even the struggles of being a woman trying to balance a family life and a career is not something that has gone away. I mean, it's 2020, and I think a lot of people still struggle with this. So I think this about does it for our story on Estee Lauder. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Were there any parts of the story that you were surprised by? Were there any shocking moments? Let me know. If you are new to my channel, I like to post beauty history stories where I dive into the history and legacy of certain icons in fashion and the cosmetics industry. Also on my channel, I like to talk about nothing but luxury beauty. And whenever I get a collection, I will create several different looks with the same items. That way you guys at home really get a sense on how to use up all of your makeup. So if that sounds interesting to you, please like, comment, and also subscribe. Also, feel free to share this video with your friends, your family, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever you feel like, because these videos do take a lot of time to research and also put together, so I would appreciate if you would help me out and share this video. All right, I think this is all I have for you guys for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.